Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Bit of an Animal, the South African Rugby Union podcast here on the Global Gainlines podcast network. This week's panel, representing Springboks, Africa du Sud, if you will, Christy.
Hi.
And from the small, quaint town in Aotearoa, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Glasgow, it's Ethan.
Oh, yeehaw, guys. No, I'm just kidding. It's me. How's it going?
Just a clarification. We were actually supposed to have a New Zealand correspondent on as well, who we reached out to on Instagram, but unfortunately, for family reasons, he had to bail last minute, which is completely understandable. I know he's watching this now, family first. And shout out to all the New Zealand supporters who got into the comments and liked and subscribed and watched the last episode. The last episode did 3,000 views, which is like the second highest views we've ever gotten, highest ever on the new YouTube channel, because we're segmenting all the YouTube channels. Even the Interpro shows got their own YouTube channel. Shout out to them as well, Kalon and those guys. So only second to, I think it was South Africa versus France last year when that game ended quite controversially. But without any further ado, we'll start with whatever we often do on this preview show. And Ethan, this is Ethan's second preview, so shout out to Ethan for joining us again. Vibes going into the second test between Springboks versus All Blacks. And shout out to all the All Blacks fans who I saw this week in Cape Town. And I'll see you all again on Saturday, including the ones I saw as we were descending Lion's Head on Monday morning. All those guys going up with their All Blacks regalia, and the one guy had like a kiwi in his bag or whatever. So yeah, they seem to be really enjoying Cape Town, including when we were on the summit. People weren't wearing New Zealand gear, but you could hear from the accent that they were here for the game. So vibes going into the first game. We'll start with Christy. We lost the first one. It was unfortunate, but two very good teams. These things are going to happen. I wasn't overly surprised that we had lost. You never want to lose, but knowing the opponent and the occasion um, and the tactics, how are you feeling going into the second test?
I think it's taken a bit of a rethink. I do think that in the first test, Rennie definitely Rennie and the coaching staff outthought Rassie and his coaching staff. So it was quite interesting to watch things implode in real time. And but yeah, I am feeling more confident about test number two. It's nice to have the banker back in the side. I'm a huge Handrè Pollard fan, so always nice to have him back again. I am a bit disappointed that Marnie dropped out, but yeah, my vibes are feeling quietly confident for this week.
Ethan, from your Scottish Aotearoa perspective, you think New Zealand, if I look at their content creators and former players on their numerous studio shows, they're keeping their powder dry. They're like, we won the first game, we got some tactics right, but this is going to be a extremely interesting four-test chess match. So I didn't see any New Zealand former player or sort of studio analyst say like, "This is it. We're the best team in the world. We're gonna run them over now. Four games to nothing." So do you concur with that sort of mindset of like, let's just actually win the series and then celebrate afterwards?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because I thought for someone who's very briefly watched the game properly about 20 minutes ago because he found it on YouTube for free and full, um, I felt South Africa, it wasn't really a good representation of South Africa. And I think it was kind of intentional. I feel like South Africa was quite withdrawn in that match. So I don't know whether Rassie was kind of holding back slightly just to see what New Zealand can do. And that New Zealand certainly showed what they can do. So I think with the momentum, New Zealand might edge this one, but I don't think they might be able to sustain it for three more or the next two matches afterwards. But I think New Zealand's done enough to be like, yeah, okay, we can work on what we've done slightly. But I think South Africa will adapt quite a lot to how they played.
Yeah, because like I've said this often on this podcast and others, like rugby, like mixed martial arts, it's four-dimensional chess. You're like constantly having to make decisions. So if you come up against a formidable opponent, even in your home country, so you have home ground advantage for the partisan crowd, it doesn't mean to say that they'll definitely. And then going into the first test, there were some people telling me like, "Oh, New Zealand don't look that great. Like they didn't look great against the Stormers. They look good against the Sharks under 21 team under rainy conditions. They look sort of fits and starts against the Bulls." And I was like, "No, I think they're keeping the cards to their chest. I think they're literally using it as sort of test, just give everybody a game and then working on things in the background. So I didn't write New Zealand off, and then some people were telling me they were surprised that New Zealand had won. But like a coin toss type game, can we really be surprised if a formidable opponent pulls off shows us some tactics that we might not have seen before, especially that and shout out to Squib Rugby who analyzed this very well. I noticed it in the game, but he sort of broke it down very well of how they sort of tried to isolate Grant Williams. And yes, Grant Williams isn't in this week's match 23, and that's not because he had a poor game. And he got isolated in the first test tactically, not because of failings of his ability, but because our overall tactics and we didn't adapt quick enough to help him not get as exposed on the edge by edge forwards and stuff like that. So New Zealand played extremely intelligently. I watched the game obviously live. I watched it again this week to sort of like gain a bit more insight. And the more I watch the game, the more I appreciate how good the Springboks are, but also how good the New Zealand are, especially since they've got this new coaching staff. We'll look now at the match 23. So both teams, Christy, I'll bring it up on the screen. I'd like to have your thoughts on South Africa, but New Zealand as well.
Yeah. I While you're getting that up, I think the thing that surprised me the most was not South Africa losing, but by the score line in the end. I mean, 5 tries to 1 is quite something. So I think, like you say, New Zealand have an ability to adapt in a way that's so much different to the Springboks. And in that sense, we just didn't adapt fast enough.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's like you go into a game with a game plan, but you have to be able to adjust your game plan on the fly. Um,
exactly. Ah,
like the
there we
best
go.
teams do it like in football. In football, people say like in soccer, some people might call it in North America. People often say, "Oh, the if you're making changes at halftime, it's too late.
Yeah.
You got to make changes mid game if you see the opponent sort of exploit you," which obviously factors into the fact that on Saturday was a really like dark day for me because I also like Kalon have the misfortune of supporting False Hope FC, Manchester United. So they lost earlier in the day and then the Springboks lost. So it was a bit of a rough weekend for me, Christy. But on the upside, Damien Willems is at fullback. Curtly Arnott is back. His HIA issue wasn't as serious as we expected. Jesse Krill and Damien Del Andy resumed their partnership as we predicted in the review show. Ethan Hooker runs out on the wing. Handrè Pollard pulled into start. I thought he would start on the bench, like our colleague said on the WhatsApp group. I really thought Handrè would jump on the bench, but he moves right into the match 23, partnered with Kobus Reinach. Jasper Visser, Peter Steftotoy continue to start. Return of Captain Fantastic, Sia Kolisi, Ronoke and Ibn Elizabeth in the a lock combo. Wilco Low starts again alongside Malcolm Marks and Oxen Che. And on the bench, Evergreen Dion Fourie, Gerard Steenkamp, Thomas Tutoy takes the place of Zach Porthen. It's a lot more experience coming on, like Lotte Yaka replaces Kobus Visa, Jasper's younger brother. Andre Esterhuizen got number 20 on his back, can play inside center, and he also went off with a bit of a knock, so he was thankfully able to play. I'm glad to see Cameron Hanekom there. I think he can make a difference. Morne van der Berg starts, and then Sacha van Ngobezulu retains a place within the match, and he drops out of the starting 15, but I think he can still make an impact off the pitch.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised to see Curtly Arnott surpassed his HIA. nice to see a really senior, experienced 9 and 10 pairing. That's going to be quite interesting to watch how they work together and how Handrè Pollard runs his backline, I guess. And then, yeah, of course, people to pick out. Jasper just had a fantastic game last week. I mean, looking at his post-contact meters was crazy. And Sia back again, really important. And I actually heard on a lot of podcasts and opinions this week just about how his presence in the team changes the mindset. So it's not necessarily about the way he plays as a six. It's more about how the mindset works around him. Um, Roanoke and yeah, Dion Fourie to become the oldest Springbok to play a test match. So that's going to be quite interesting. He overtakes Victor Matfield and Skulk Brits. So quite an interesting one. Uh, I'm really excited to see what Cameron Hanekom can do here against the All Blacks. I think from the perspective of we can't have Jasper Wiese play 80 minutes every game. It's not sustainable in the long run, especially if we want to be making sure that he makes 2027. So it's going to be nice to see how Hanekom can come on and kind of change the game if he's even coming on for Jasper Wiese. That's another thought because he might well come on for Sia or I doubt Peter Steff will come off halfway through. Krappies had a really, really good season with the Lions last season, so nice to see him back again. And then a lot of bad talk about Sasha this week. Just and I think more than anything, you've got to consider the fact that he's so young, and it might well be a confidence thing. My issue with Sasha when he starts is that I don't think his ball distribution to the back line is as effective as some of our other tens have been right from the beginning. Obviously, he grows into a game because he's still young. He's got a lot of things that I suppose are on his mind. He's got to think about all the other stuff. But yeah, it was interesting to see. So another thing about this is if Handrè Pollard comes off halfway through, does Sasha take over the kicking? Because he didn't kick last week. So
Yeah.
that's another thing to consider.
Yeah, I think it might. It was interesting that Justin Colby actually kicked last week. He had kicked before that Barbarians game where the cameraman decided to assault him.
Yeah.
He's a poor cameraman, but they had a laugh about it. Yeah, on the New Zealand perspective, minimal changes. Leroy Carter coming in uh, for Josh Morby. Josh Morby shifting to the bench, and as you guys informed me, Anton Signer went and sort of had to leave because he had to visit his friend Arthuritis, and he's already had surgery on that to clear it up. So bit of a shuffle around, Ethan. Still a solid team for Mike Blair to get his teeth stuck into.
Yep, future Edinburgh coach again, Mike Blair. Can't wait for him to come back. Um, yeah, it's still quite a solid one. I think the Murby swapping for Carter is interesting. So I don't know if that's necessarily just a general rotation thing, or because if memory serves me right, as the most casual Hurricanes fan at the moment, I'm pretty sure Murby can play fullback as well. So I wonder if that's possibly just having that sort of Swiss Army knife in the back pocket, just in case whether he needs to replace Carter or Mackenzie. I don't recognize Bower though. I don't know.
So,
Yeah.
if you watched the Lions earlier in the
Mhm.
week, which you might not have had access to, but George Bower came on after the Lions scrum had been really, really effective,
Mhm.
and he stabilized things quite well.
Because I could not tell you who he played for or where he came from. Because some of these names have just completely came out of the ground for me, which is kind of hard for poor old me who can't watch Super Rugby. and who has no connection to the All Blacks in any way,
I'm
shape,
sure
or
you
form.
could watch Super Rugby. I'm sure there's a way, but we can't mention it without getting in trouble with Police
Yeah,
Commissioner Ben.
yeah,
So George Bauer actually also came on in the first test and played quite well, to my
Yeah, I did.
neighbor's delight, because his name is also George, but we call him Jorge. But yeah, he actually showed up because the guy who started, Ethan de Klein, or as they call him, Ethan de Groot, he was strapped up. His knee was quite really strapped up. So it wasn't really
yeah.
surprising to me that he was getting pushed around in the first test. And then when he came off, George Bauer did really, really solid. Tara Lomax on the other side of the scrum, also yeoman-like work. I will say Fabian Holland, like Signer, not born in New Zealand, naturalized New Zealand. He's also impressed me quite well. I mean, he's not quite at the Tupavai level or at the Patrick Tuipulotu level, but he's looking pretty solid. And then I think both teams will have a really massive impact from their bench. Maybe advantage slightly to New Zealand, but similar to the first test, bit of a coin toss. Um, Christy, have you seen the weather report? It looks very Auckland weather in Cape Town on Saturday.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a howler. I was speaking to my dad about it earlier on Sunday, and he said that actually it seems to be flipping day to day. So I'm not sure how you're feeling about it from a weather perspective, but I think, yeah, I mean, they've put that in place, having Damian McKenzie there, which is quite interesting because Mackenzie had that problem. Was it in the first test or was it before that he was having that problem limping? I think actually when he played against the Bulls. So that's quite an interesting comment, Ethan, to say that maybe Moorby is there so that the switch can happen for Mackenzie to have a little bit of time. Geordie, so far, Geordie Barrett has been my player of the series so far, and I include the the club games. Ruben Love I thought was really, really good last week. So he did play last week, right? I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
imagining
He
Yeah,
that.
played
yeah.
against. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so
Um,
many New Zealanders. It's so difficult to keep
yeah.
track of.
Um, and then yeah, Fabian Holland, like you say, naturalized actually from the Netherlands. So quite an interesting backstory there. Um, Kyle Preston, I thought was really impressive, and I think that was against the Lions. That I thought he was a little bit quicker than I expected him to be, just because I haven't seen a lot of him, to be honest. And then yeah, Tyrell Lomax, what can you say? And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the difference from a scrum perspective, having this front row start against the same one we had last week.
Yeah.
Are they going to be as effective as they were, or like you say, is it because of the strapping? Who knows?
Yeah. It's quite interesting because I'm not the I think Anthony LeBron's a good player. I just don't know if he is who he used to be. Carl
Yeah.
Preston's coming along. I didn't have a chance really on the other previous podcast to really give Cam Roigard his flowers because he didn't play any of the warm-up games. But Plixum is this guy good. Look, we have a lot of good scrum halves. And I haven't seen Anton Dupont play in a while. But like Cam Roigard's gonna be like the best scrum half I've ever seen. Like when he like clears the ball, it goes for a mile. It's such variation. The annoyance for me from South African scrum halves is they lack variation in their game plan. Whereas guys like Cam Roigard, guys like the Leinster scrum half whose name shall not be named, Voldemort, they do like also a New Zealander, naturalized Irish player. Uh, it's just so good. So yeah, Cam, I thought remember Cam was on the list of like people who were like thought of as being half injured and that kind of thing. And then there was some report of him and Will Jordan possibly not making the first test. And not only did they play the first test, but they stood out in those games. Ethan, Death Taxes and Will Jordan scoring tries. Your thoughts?
Yeah, was I right in thinking he could have had a double in that game. I can't remember if he almost had an early score, if it was somebody else. It might have been um Carter. I might be getting mixed up, but he's just inevitable. That because what's he on, like 50 something tries at least?
53 now.
53, which because he is getting older. So the fact that he scored against South Africa quite convincingly from what I can recall at his sort of older years is really impressive. Gotta give him credit. He must
And
get bored.
yeah, and New Zealand like go through wings at an alarming rate. They have
Mm.
a wing, they break through, and they sort of fade away at certain points. We saw this with Julian uh, Ioane. I
Yeah.
forget what's it.
Mark
Um,
Talea.
yeah, yeah,
Mark Delia, yeah.
yeah. Mark Delay, Zulu dad. New Zealand mom, rumored to be related to Teminkosi. Um, and then Peter Lakai of he's fantastic off the bench. Still no Wallace Atiti though. Interesting. Credit to Adi Surveyor with that pass. Like people keep saying like Adi Surveyor could play 10. They're not joking. They're not joking. Um, yeah, Peter Lakai off the bench last week also great impact. Like I was dad. Oh, he's either his dad or like he's of Ghanaian descent. I looked that up earlier this week, so that's interesting. Yeah, and then I'd like to reiterate what Christy said. Like in South Africa and at rugby, but in sports in general, people build certain players up almost for the sake of tearing them down. And I saw a lot of that with Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma this week. He didn't have the best game, but he sets high standards, and within the plays that he has done before, he might not have played to that level last week, but I'm glad that he didn't fall out of the match entirely. Even though I thought it would be Manie Libbok and then Pollard on the bench as Manie Libbok insurance. So yeah, we'll do the predictions for this game right at the end, but we'll talk now about the game. We'll go back in time a little and talk now about the game that we've touched on a little bit here and there in this early preview. I mean, match 23 preview. It's the Lions, the Gauteng Lions, not to be confused by the British and Irish Lions. And unsurprisingly to me, they ran New Zealand the closest. They were able to field just about a full strength URC team. Um, the Lions having actually made the URC playoffs last season, and a lot of the players that people brushed off had fantastic games. Nico Steyn had a good game. Chris Smith had a good game. Bato Khakani had a good game. Sipa Maashe had an incredibly good game, continuing his form from the URC. Often players will have a good URC and then they'll sort of fall off a little maybe the beginning of the next season. Not the case with Sipa Maashe. Um, JC Pretorius on the bench, Hashim Peed. The amount of former Sharks players in this team is significant. Etienne Oosthuizen, although to be fair, we got him from the Lions in the first place. Hayden Andrews, Peter Chamberlain, Sikambuza Noche, one of my all-time favorite players. Born Venter makes his debut. For the Lions in a competitive game. Ethan is very well versed with Born Venter because he nearly got him to play for Scotland.
Yeah.
So close yet so far. Lions only lost by 6 points and had a really good first half. Um, Christy, I'm impressed by our Gauteng neighbors.
Yeah. Huge shout out to Kewan Horn particularly. I thought Chris Smith played brilliantly, but he does have a really fantastic kicking coach. So someone that I think was very underrated during his career. So Mornay Steyn is truly something else. I think he's done wonders there with Chris. Not that Chris wasn't good already. Like you say, Mahashe was excellent. I thought Hashimpi didn't have as good a game as I expected when he came on. Again, very much like a Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu, like he sets such high standards that when he doesn't have a great game, people get stressed about it. And it's just about, these guys are so young and they're just, coming into into their own style of play. Bato Aklani also played well. And then you heard the Franco Horn. I don't know if you heard the Franco Horn story, but his father actually played against New Zealand when they toured in 1996, and when he played for Boland. His dad's name was Francois, if I remember correctly. So that was quite an interesting little piece of trivia that I learned this week. And then, yeah, classic Buta Chamberlain. Nice to see him. He was only on for, what, 12 minutes or something. And then I thought Cronje actually also had a pretty good game. Lots of, quite a few line breaks, and he was really physical. So he did quite well, handled Rico Awane quite well, which is not always that easy.
I think earlier I said Julian Ioane, but I meant to say Julian Savia. The New Zealand rugby supporters from the previous podcast are going to jump into the comments before they get to this part of the thing. Oh, it's all engagement. Okay, so for the New Zealand team, Barrett, solid game at fullback. Rico Ioane of Leinster fame, Tawa Dava at inside centre. Interestingly enough, I was stoked to see JC Moanga make it to South Africa. Only had to play one NPC game. Noah Hotham played pretty solid for somebody who had to join the squad quite late. Christie's friend Ethan Blackadder. At 7, Wallace Atiti at 6. I hardly ever see that. Wallace Atiti had a really good game at against the Sharks, and then a very senior sort of lock pairing there with Patrick with younger Derry. Some of these guys are playing off the bench in both games, like Carl Preston and Anton Leonard Brown played off the bench on Tuesday and Peter Lakai. So that's interesting, sort of like preparing them for the game to come. Tusi is a good player, but I'm not overly impressed by his scrummaging at times, maybe somewhat inconsistent. And then, yeah, Ethan, I know you wouldn't maybe able to catch this game live, but you thoughts on the fact that the Lions, but yeah, you're very well versed with the Lions considering how they actually sort of like somehow in Joburg put lots of points on Glasgow.
Yep. That's the thing. I said it in a pre-pod that the Lions, I'm not surprised by this scoreline because the Lions can in theory do this to anybody in Johannesburg. It's just they can't do it away from Ellis Park, which is a shame because they're so fun to watch. Like I remember when Edinburgh and Glasgow were getting pumped earlier in the year by the Lions, that you saw them like diving through the air, scooping the ball as they were flying, like scooping the ball like that to keep it in and stuff. It was just insane. You couldn't be mad that we lost. I think it does quite well for the Lions in that they put up a really good showing. Like they basically the URC side. Probably they're almost as close to a first choice side from an outsider's perspective, putting over what 30 points on New Zealand. Not the best New Zealand side, but you've got Richie Mo'unga, Sititi Blackadder, um, Peter Lakai. It's quite some quite big names in there. Lancer legend, of course, Rico Ioane. So I think the Lions, they seem like they've done the best showing of the URC side so far.
Yeah, this was the fourth game for New Zealand against the URC sides, and the Lions did the best. It could be numerous factors. They were able to field a more senior team instead of like the mixed team of the Stormers, Sharks, and Bulls. But also to the Lions' credit, they're in the midst of preseason as well. This All Black team has been training with the other All Blacks. They've been actually playing games and stuff, so they're likely slightly sharper. Yeah, but like great sort of okay, the stadium wasn't necessarily well attended for this one, but sort of a great opportunity for players when New Zealand tour to like get this experience. Very much like I would only think like players who missed out was like as Christy rightly pointed out in the pre-pod discussion, Renzo du Plessis might feel aggrieved of not having gotten an opportunity here. one or two other players. But the reality is that it is quite nice to see the Lions have a degree of depth, because they're going to need that for URC, and they're in the Champions Cup this season. So yeah, New Zealand. I will say the number 14 wing Fini Ganufu, he's trying to get out of his contract with Newcastle, because he signed a pre-contract with Newcastle to go play rugby there now, and then he didn't think he would be picked with guys like Leicester Fayanuku unavailable, and now he's like, Connor, just stay. But good luck to him as it relates to that. Let me switch my camera back on here. Okay, so before we get to the Currie Cup part, the Springbok senior team isn't the only team who were playing this weekend, who will play this week. This Springbok women's A team took on Brazil, and Christy's gonna give us some insight on that.
Yeah, so really young team, just stacked with debutantes. I think we had, out of the starting 15, there were 4 non-debutantes, so it was quite a showing. Mary Zulu was the captain, also interestingly, the oldest player in the team at 23. So it was quite something. Very young team. 8 players under 20, 4 players 19 years old. So it was really fascinating to watch them. There are a couple of players that stood out for me. Up at the front, we had Luchelle Hanekom, who played hooker, did really well. Really nice line-out work, which has not always been a strength for the Springbok women. So nice to see someone coming through who can really do that job well. Then Avela Gwala, who played 7 flank. She was really, really powerful, quite strong. Mary Zulu at 10 kicked well. She scored a try, which ultimately was disallowed, and controversial circumstances, in my opinion. And then our number 11, Lita Letu Nombakuse, was excellent. Speedy, really good defensively. She was so busy all around at all times. So I thought she did really well. And then someone that I enjoy, Carmelita Malone, came off the bench. So everybody, I think, did well, considering it ended 34-12 to Brazil. So we did lose the game. But once again, I think there were a few controversial moments in the game. But overall, I thought, for a first time ever, I mean, I don't think a lot of people even know that we have an SAA women's team. So for a very first tour, I think this is some valuable experience for the girls. And yeah, they can only grow into better rugby players from this. So we're going to see how it goes on from there. And Saturday, there's another game. It's Brazil time, so it's sort of midnight, 1 a.m. kind of times. It is being shown on the YouTube channel that it's called UOL Sport. And so it's free to watch if anyone wants to have a watch. But yeah, you have to search for the information a little bit more seriously than you would for senior men's team or even the Springbok women. So, but if you do want to have a look, you can always send me a message and I'll send you the information and the links.
Yeah. Hopefully I can get it from you, and I can put it in the description, and then people can get it from there even. I would like to ask, like, we're relatively familiar with the senior women's Springboks coaching staff. How does the South African A women's team coaching staff consist of?
So our head coach's name is Bafana Kekani. Oh, I'm very bad with my pronunciations today, but I think just been a long week so far. And they're it's quite a young group who are coming through mostly from the Stellenbosch Academy.
Mhm.
So it's going to be quite interesting to see how that develops. So none of the senior women's coaching staff are currently actively there in Brazil. I assume they take a little bit of an interest in it, but yeah, as far as I know, they're yes, Leco. I wonder if these two are related to each other.
Yeah, Bongi. Bongi is the assistant coach. Oh, okay. Team doctor, physiotherapist. I always like to give shout outs to like the broader coaching staff as well, because we put so much onus on just the head coach, but it's really a team effort, not just on the field, but off the field as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's also, this is very much not just the development of the players themselves, but these types of tournaments are also developments of the broader coaching IP. And we want to see young coaches sort of gain experience and sort of move up the ranks. Especially there's a lot of people, even our colleague Letha, who's currently playing for the Toyota Cheetahs. His great ambition for the rest of his career is to move up the coaching ranks. So shout out to him. We also try to get him on this evening, but he's in the midst of training and he needs to sleep. So
Of
much
course.
like much like Bandile Kozoayo, the other shocks, but he's preparing for a international weightlifting competition in Canada. So sometimes I'll text him and like, oh, this is the time we're going to record, and he'd be like, no, tomorrow's leg day. I can't do that. Ethan's also at the gym quite often, so he knows the struggle.
Yep. Yep. I sacrificed the gym tonight just for you guys. That's
Oh man,
totally my
Ethan.
excuse for not going.
I don't know about you, Ethan, but I use exercise, lifting weights, and cardio as sort of a means of like clearing my head.
Yeah.
So I tend not to. I sort of work the podcast around that. I did a run earlier today, just an easy 5K. Shout out to my friend OG for joining us on that run. Um, but these games are not the only games taking place. There are still four Currie Cup games this weekend. They revolve around the Springbok game, so they're not on the same day as the Springbok or Women's Springbok game. Um, Christie, the Lions have named their team relatively consistent now that we're getting into the latter part of the Currie Cup with these teams, not just the other four franchise unions in terms of like Boland, Pumas, Griquas, and Cheetahs, but the URC teams who have really sort of galvanized like these are the Currie Cup players, and they will then earn their right into the URC team. They'll probably be on the fringes, or some of them might actually play quite a bit of URC depending on opportunities, and then that's how you sort of work your way up the system. Um, Very similar team to last week from the Lions, so we don't have a lot of time, so I'll just brush over it. Johan Skuman, I always give him a shout out because I met him once at the Sharks Supporters Club when he played for the Sharks, and he was incredibly very polite and very welcoming to all of us. Sibu Nkosi, not so much that day, but he was upset that he probably in hindsight in the moment actually I realized, oh, he's probably upset because he just came back from injury and then he had to go off for a knee injury, so he was probably just grumpy as it relates to that. Um, and then the Stormers team, also relatively consistent. Nice to see former Marty's University of Stellenbosch captain actually captaining the Stormers 23 in the Currie Cup, Ezekiel Ngobeni, a player we recently recruited. A player from the Stormers. I always wanted us to get Ezekiel Ngobeni as well because he can play really well at scrum half and wing. So this time yet, Marcus Miller starts again at outside center. Mm, Vernon Paulo's played relatively well since he signed for the Stormers from the Cheetahs, and Altus Rabe, baby Bok Altus Rabe might not have gone to the World Cup, but played in the South African series against Chile, Fiji, and Georgia. He's on the bench. Shout out to his dad. We spoke to his dad as well at live at the game. Gert Kemp as well, another baby Bok. Um, Thoughts on the Lions versus Stormers at Friday at 5 past 5, Christy?
Yeah, not a nice day, a Friday night to in winter to be going to Ellis Park, but I suppose what can the Stormers do? And probably won't get a lot of people in the stadium because there's been a lot of action happening at Ellis Park in the past 2 weeks. Nice to see Renzo back in the side. I'm a huge fan. So I think it's going to be a really good matchup across the board because, like you say, super consistent team-wise from both sides. And yeah, I think the guys are warm, and now that it's getting into the serious part, um, as far as I remember, the Lions still have an outside chance of qualifying again, but maybe they don't want to go down to the Griquas in the final again. So we'll see.
Yeah, a lot of good players in both teams. It's
Mm.
a really mix of youth and experience, but I'd watch out for both these team sheets. Some of these guys are gonna, especially the not just the guys who won the World Cup with the junior Springboks, but just some of the guys in sort of the periphery of the team. Assad Morse was a junior Springbok not too long ago, and he left the Stormers. This will be his first game against his old team, so he's got a point to prove as starting against them. Luke Conan, very interestingly bracketed as 23 when he plays loose forward for the Baby Box, having won the Junior World Cup. So interesting sort of selections there. Coming, there's a lot of Baby Box against Baby Box violence in this
Yes.
Currie Cup. Seriously, it was like the best of friends, and now I'm gonna kill you. Speaking of gonna kill you, my Sharks versus Jean's very good Bulls 23 in the Currie Cup. A lot of good players. They might not be players that are the forefront of everybody's mind, but the Bulls and the Sharks tend to recruit blue chip like just there's there's 220 match 23, so that means there's 43 names in front of us now. I'm willing to guess 60% of these guys were the head boys at their private school, the Afrikaans rugby private school, that is. But yeah, very consistent Sharks team. Loan Gilleme playing against the team is about to sign for at the Bulls. Chrissy Grobler has been quite good. Lyle Matthews has been a revelation. Sivanga, I can't pronounce everybody's name exactly right. This is very similar to in the pre-pod discussions. It's like you learn to pronounce Atanati Klabakade's name properly, and now it just rolls off the tongue. But now he's not in rugby, unfortunately, in very disturbing circumstances. Unfortunately, N- not his fault, in my opinion, to be honest. And then the very young front rows again, Ngobese, Liam van Wyk, and Rambo Kubeka. Yes, Rambo is his actual first name. You can look it up. Albie Bester and Siamasuku on the bench, almost identical team to last week. As it relates to the Bulls, Keegan Johannes at nine, interesting, shifting to nine from 10. Ivan van der Merwe, I'm not that familiar with. I think he was also a Baby Buck 2 seasons ago. Marke is a Baby Buck superstar alongside his Baby Buck compatriots, the Ron. Um, Ndebele headed starting at hooker, headed to the Sharks. Very excited to have him in Durban. But yeah, there was a wing that played quite well against the All Blacks for the Bulls that I didn't see him in the thing. So he's pretty much back. If you look at all these teams' social medias, they're very much back. The players who played against the All Blacks are very much back in URC preseason. So we look forward to seeing them. Maybe the last game of the Currie Cup. You never know. Okay, so those games are on Friday. The Saturday game, Pumas versus Cheetahs, the cat fight. Um, Saturday at 2 p.m. Interesting on a Saturday game, considering there is a Springbok game. N Team's not announced yet. Ethan, you'd be interested to see the Pumas team announced later because their loose forward is headed to Glasgow not too long from now. And then Boland versus Griquas in Wellington. Yes, Griquas are by far and away the best team in the Currie Cup right now, followed closely by the Cheetahs on the back of Faf de Klerk being like a god at Currie Cup level. Um, uh, but I think Boland will give them a bit of a run for their money. We now shift to the last part of the episode where we do predictions. And we have match 23s now. Earlier this week, on Sunday night, we did early predictions on vibes alone, no match 23s. So we'll go with Christy first.
Oi. Um, yeah, I was way off last week. Luckily, I wasn't on the pod to make my prediction. Um, so I am going to say Springboks by 3 because I think New Zealand have put up an incredibly strong team, but I think that the Springboks feeling in the camp is we cannot afford to lose another game. And as we know from our great documentaries, Chasing the Sun and Chasing the Sun 2, love to be an underdog. So I think backing the Springboks this week.
Ethan, there's like legitimate rumors, not just like shithousery, that when Tony Brown goes to New Zealand, we might get Mike Blair. Thoughts?
I mean, like I don't think he'll be getting into the Scotland SAP anytime soon at the moment, which is it's good for Mike Blair. He seemed like a really nice guy, and I do wish him the best. It's like him and Bone Venter, that Bone, it's okay. We want what's best for you. That we love you, Bone. We're glad you got to play for South Africa. That's the main thing. It makes you happy. That's all that matters. For Mike Blair, I think I could see it. It's kind of it's a bit weird that it's kind of like, oh yeah, Mike Blair got a job, and then like 2 weeks later, it's like, yeah, Tony Brown will be back, in like 2 years' time, and Mike's thinking, what? What's happened
I
to
will,
my
I
job?
will, yeah, exactly. I will also say the New Zealand supporters from South Africa, when I went to the New Zealand welcome event at Cape Town Stadium, they're very well versed. They're very articulate about rugby, and they know their rugby so well. Then one of them tapped me on the shoulder and was like, "Why don't I see Mike play?" And I didn't even think of that. I was like, "Why is Mike playing out here?" Why? That kind of thing. So your prediction, Ethan?
I think I agree with you, Chrissy. I think it will be about a 3 point margin, but I think it might swing to New Zealand's favour in that I can see South Africa being a lot better, especially I think it helps having Pollard and oh gosh, the name literally just jumped at my head at the last second. Begins with a H, doesn't it? The scrum half.
Oh, Reiner.
Mhm.
Reinach, there we go. Having that sort of like Bulls contingent, that I
Mhm.
think having that Bulls access at 9 and 10 will help just for that coherency. Then I think because it was weird that South Africa, their scrum and their line out and all the set piece and stuff were solid. I think it's just them being able to build off of it to was where they kind of struggled against New Zealand. But I think with the number of penalties they won from scrums and stuff, having Pollard there might change the tactics. That they might go, they might opt to kick for the corner more, which is what I felt they should have done more rather than go for the post. I get kicking once or twice for posts, but I think they really should have went, especially when they had the momentum to try and go for the jugular. But I think New Zealand still has the energy and just enough in the tank to scrape a win this game. But I think we'll see South Africa probably pull ahead in the third and fourth tests.
Yeah, it's an interesting tactic because the New Zealand commentators and media personalities and just New Zealand fans were actually correct in stating that like um, you can't just win everything with the scrums. You need to like have a holistic approach, especially when you come up against another top three team. And it was weird because New Zealand in the first test, New Zealand's line out defense was relatively solid, and they sort of grew into the game late. And like I said in the immediate reaction, the review pod, it was disappointing for me that the loss of cohesion and trying to sort of play out of a such almost jouet as you would say. Um, when we were 10 points down, it was like 22 minutes left. When instead we should have maybe rumbled up and become a bit more conservative, kick for the line out. I know New Zealand could have poached the line out, so the lines aren't completely clear. But yeah, I earlier this week I said 4 points, and looking at the match 33s, I think it's relatively still at that stage of South Africa by 4 points. It's going to be, we'll see. Like Chris is correct in saying that the weather report seems to be shifting throughout the week, so that's another factor. I will be there in a sort of rain jacket. I'll still be wearing flip-flops and cargo shorts because I'm South African. But we'll see how we sort of adapt to the environment. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate your time, Christy and Ethan. And
Yeah.
until next week, as we say every week, in Rassie, we trust.